Hello AquaClan, welcome to this month's tutorial, and we are going to be doing this beautiful poppy field. I want to go through with you what I did with the paper here. So I soaked this piece of paper in the sink for a couple of minutes, so it's very well saturated on both sides. That's why I do not need tape to tape down the paper. It will stay flat through the entire painting process here. Now this is another backlit. I just love backlit subjects. I love portraying light in watercolor, and I'm starting off, of course, with very light colors here. And I have some different warm yellows. Whatever warm yellows you have in your palette is fine. And I'm just making some meandering lines like I see in the reference photo, those distant trees that are fuzzy and out of focus but are letting a lot of the light come through. Slowly bringing in some of my greens, and the first green that I grabbed here is gold green. So sort of trying to transition from that yellow to green, so it's a very nice soft spring green color. So as you can see, I'm just adding it in the areas where I've already added the yellow, and I'm blending those two together. I have some sap green that I'm bringing into the mix, and I'm using sepia too. So I just gave my paper a little spray there just to help move the watercolors a little bit more. It's going to make things bleed better. And I like to tilt my paper. It helps to move things around, as well as spraying the paper and just kind of paying attention and watching what happens to your composition and letting watercolor do its thing. So now that I have the fuzzy background, I do love the amount of light that's coming through. I'm going to add some warm red for the poppies, and it's going to spread really nicely because my paper's pretty wet. So I'm just adding in groups of poppies by dabbing in those reds in certain areas. Now, I do have to go around the red blobs and paint in green. So I'm just going to concentrate on working one side at a time because my paper would dry too fast and I wouldn't be able to get those soft edges. So now that I put in those red poppies, I'm working around and adding my greens in there as well. I'm continuing with the greens, but I'm leaving some white areas where I'm going to drop in more red poppies. There are some darker spots in between the poppies, so I'm mixing my sepia with my sap green so that I could increase the value. Coming back to my red, I'm going to drop in those areas where I left the white. Brightening up those back ones that have faded out a lot and just dropping in a little more red there. So as I'm making marks on my paper, I'm seeing how much it's drying and how much time I have left to add any more detail. So poppies have little dark areas. I am just going to dab in a little bit of sepia for those middles. So I'm building up those dark colors, trying to get those shadow areas as dark as they need to be. Now, with a script liner brush that's just damp, I keep rinsing it out. I'm doing negative painting, so I'm just using water that's lifting up and making lighter marks. You can see them start to come up. And this is a great way to bring back a little detail and light into the area, have some lighter strokes. Now you just have to watch that your script liner brush does not have too much water on it, because you can make a big bloom if you get too big of a drop of water, and it'll wreck the effect. I would recommend practicing on a piece of paper just so you can see what I'm talking about and seeing how your drying paper reacts to bringing in water. You don't want the script liner brush sopping wet with fresh water, you just want it damp. So what I did to the one side, my right side of my paper has dried too much for me to just start doing what I did on the left. So I'm going to hopefully try to blend it in as best I can. And I'm starting off with the greens this time. I'm going to leave space for the red that I'm going to be putting in. I'm just trying to get those colors in as fast as I can. So I'm just glancing at my reference photo and deciding where I need these poppies to be. Coming in with my warm red and adding in the poppies. For the warm red, I have Scarlet Lake. So they are blending in and spreading nicely like it did on the left-hand side. As they spread, the color fades, so I'm just popping in a bit more thicker consistency of the red, and then of course adding the dots with the sepia. Now I know I have to work quickly here to get in those darker greens and continue putting in those grass strokes to match the other side. And knowing that I have to work quite quickly where the drier areas meeting where I'm painting, I'm using my finger to smudge that line there so that it blends in nicely. If I add too much moisture or I go over the part that I've already painted, I chance making a bloom, which I don't want. Now, if you're working on a smaller piece of paper, you would probably have time to put in the whole thing without just doing one side like I just did. But I am using a full sheet 8 by 12 paper, and I just knew I probably wouldn't have time to get everything in before it started drying on me. I start off most of my paintings by doing a small thumbnail little sketch painting of the ideas I have to see if they are going to work. So that would also be a good idea, just to let you guys know that. It's always a good idea to see how it's going to come together and if the colors that you have are going to work together. And it just kind of prepares you for your bigger piece that you want to make. I'm doing the negative painting again with fresh water, just using a damp brush and lifting. So this came out quite nicely. I'm very happy with it. Now, once everything dries, I'm going to come back in to do those top poppies and put a few of them in focus just by going over what I already have. I love to use a chisel brush for making flowers, but you can definitely use a round brush for this. So since I'm working wet on dry, I don't have much time before those poppies dry, so I'm dropping in those brown spots right away. So any flowers that I want a little more defined, I'm just going over them with the red paint. This is really starting to look good. I love the way this turned out. I hope you guys do too. Now I'm just going to make some foliage, some stems where I need to attach those flowers. And then there's little seedlings that are backlit in the reference photo This just adds some really nice details to add in a little bit of those tiny details in the background here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this month's tutorial. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next month.